Hi, I'm Coach Corey Wayne, and this is my video coaching newsletter. And the topic of this newsletter is going to be why she didn't call you back right away. Well, I've got an email here, and this quote obviously is going to be about patience. Because if a girl hasn't called you back in the time that you expected, 99% of the time, choosing to do nothing is usually the best response. Because patience, you got to practice infinite patience with women, especially if you've over pursued or you spent a lot of time together, or you called or texted her a bunch and now she kind of seems cold and distant or not really that excited or enthusiastic to talk to you. So I got a quote here. This is from Chinese Proverbs that I want to share. Patience is power. With time and patience, the mulberry leaf becomes a silk gown. So I've got an email here from a viewer. And they say, hey coach, so I watched some of your YouTube videos and was pleasantly surprised with how much insight you give into the dating game. I don't usually find myself asking for advice with women, as I have found that generally being myself and playing it cool has worked well enough for me to get by. However, I recently started dating a very attractive girl and things have gone a bit sour as far as I can tell. Yeah, it's like you think you're good and you think you got your game is tight, and then a girl comes along who knocks your fucking socks off, and for just whatever reason, things don't seem to go as easy as they do with some of the other women that you maybe weren't as interested in the past. And so in order to attract ever increasingly better quality women, the idea is that you always want to be working on becoming a better man yourself, because you want to become the kind of person that you ultimately want to attract. And when one of these really super high quality women come along, that's, even though she's drop dead gorgeous, there's just something about her that's different than the rest of the women that you meet. It's just something about the way she walks, something about the way she moves, the sound of her voice, her smile, her enchanting eyes, her beautiful hair. Just some women have a certain effect. Not every woman's going to have that kind of an intense effect. And like I say a lot, is that's why it's so important to apply the things that I teach, because when one of these really amazing women come along in your life, you want to make sure you get it right, because you don't want to be licking your wounds for the next 3 to 6 months because you got blown off or dumped by the girl because you didn't handle things properly when it came to dating. So he says, I met a girl at a dance class and she seemed to show a lot of interest, and so I asked her out for a drink. She agreed, and at the end of the date, we kissed each other, and all seemed to go well, so we agreed to meet each other again. Well, you're making a date at the end of the first date. And a lot of times when guys do that, the vibe that they're giving off is one of, oh my God, I'm probably never going to see you again, and I better make a date right now, because if I try to call you later on, you probably won't answer the phone, and I won't be able to get a date, so I'd rather get one right now where I can get you to nail you down to a commitment. And that's just a bad way to go, because it shows impatience, it shows neediness. Because guys that don't get a lot of dates or don't get a lot of second dates, that's the way they act. And the average woman has been out with enough guys to pick up in the vibe on guys that get it and understand how attraction works, and guys that are impatient in hell and don't. So he says, after a few days without contact, I texted her again, and we then went on a second date. And again, things went well, and she seemed even more interested at the end of the night, and we kissed again. Good sign, good job. He says, the following day, I had to go on a business trip to Spain for a week, but we arranged to meet up when I got back. So you're calling the very next day, or you're making the next date at the end of your current date, or you're calling the very next day. It's a scientific fact that women are more attracted to men whose feelings are unclear. And what you're doing is you're doing too much, too soon, too much pursuing. And you do this enough, even when the girl starts out with high interest, which it sounds like this girl has, the more she starts to see this pattern and the more your interest goes up, the more you start to do this kind of behavior. And so what happens is you start moving along at a quicker pace than her emotions are at that point. And so you're like heading into the danger zone right now with the way you're behaving with this particular girl. And it's obviously a reflection of how much you're into this girl, because when you really like a girl, it's hard to take your time and to relax and chill out, because obviously you're excited to see her And even when the date ends, you don't really want the date to end. And that, is probably part of one of the reasons why you're making the next one. But another part of it is deep down, you have a fear that you're not going to get another date and she's going to blow you off just like all the other women in the past have. And all I'm saying is that your body language and the way you're interacting with this girl, you're communicating and you're acting in a way that a guy who's not very successful and doesn't date very often does. So he says, during the trip, I sent her a few messages just to see how she was, and she responded positively. The phone is for setting dates. And here now you're over texting because in your mind you think, I got to do something. I got to keep texting her because otherwise she's going to forget about me. And when you do that, that's the kind of thing a woman does when she's really starting to fall for a guy. And so you go out on like 2 dates and you start calling and texting just about every day as if she was your girlfriend. It's too much, too soon. It makes her feel like a relationship. It makes her feel like she's going to lose her freedom and she's going to back up. So he says, I got back on Wednesday and then I contacted her on Saturday to see if she wanted to meet up early the following week. It was here that she stopped contacting me. Big shock. So he says, I heard nothing from her Saturday, Sunday, Monday. However, I got a message from her today ignoring my third date request and just asking how my trip went. And so here is the important thing. Here's where you turned things around correctly. Because you left a message and you waited for her to get back to you. And I know you probably chewed off all of your fucking fingernails and maybe even some of your toenails because you were nervous and you were waiting. But it paid off. Had you have continued to over pursue, she would have definitely never called you again. But here what happens is you leave a message and she's kind of like, She knows that you're into her and she knows that she could have you. So there's no doubt in her mind. And so after spending a couple of days away from you, it's like that feeling like she was going to lose her freedom. Now she hasn't heard from you in 2 or 3 days. And she was starting to judge you as kind of stalkerish and needy and therefore not a good catch. And so 2 or 3 days go by and she hasn't heard from you. And then, so what happens is she starts to doubt herself. And she starts to think, well, maybe I misjudged this guy. I haven't heard from him. I wonder what he's doing. Did he find somebody else? Because if just a few days ago, it's like she didn't care. So here's what happens. She reaches out to you after a few days, and deep down she knows that she really should have called you back instead of blowing you off like that. And because women want the guy to be the leader, they want the guy to be the aggressor. In other words, they want you to take the leadership role and make the dates happen, make the opportunities for sex to happen, hang out, have fun, and hook up, as I like to say often. They want you to lead. And so that's why you'll see things like this. You don't hear from her for 3 days and she calls. And typically what happens, the guy goes, why isn't she bringing up getting together? I don't get it. She's just, instead of calling me, asking, talking about when we can get together for our next date, she's just like, hey, how are you? How was your trip? That's what women do. She's putting herself into your orbit, and you should automatically assume that, hey, this girl wants to see me again. And so you should be like, hey, great to hear. My trip went awesome. Well, hey, let's get together and we can talk about it over a drink or talk about it over dinner. When are you free to get together? Make a date. Awesome. I'll see you then. I can't wait to catch up. And that's it. And then by setting a date 2 or 3 days in the future, she's got time and space away from you to wonder about you and think about you and let those feelings build. But if the right ratio, women should be initiating 70 to 80% of the calling, texting, pursuing. It's still really too early for her to do that. No, under normal circumstances, had you have done everything right and only gone out once a week, not asking for a second date at the end of or the next date at the end of your dates, usually by the second or the third week, the woman will start reaching out and saying, hey, how was your trip? The typical guy gets mad and gets upset about that, but you should be excited because she reached out to you. She initiated contact. This is the beginning of pursuit type of behavior. But you should understand that the reason it took her so many days is because you've been fucking up and her interest has dropped. And so by making a date 2 or 3 days in the future and staying off the phone and cutting all this bullshit unnecessary texting out, you'll actually turn things around. And that's all you need to do. And after you go out on your next date, wait until the following week and call her or text her again. Same thing. Just call her once a week to invite her out for a date. Now what happens as her interest goes up, she ain't going to wait to hear from you until the following week. So it might only be 2 or 3 days go by since your last date that she'll call you or text you, and you should assume, oh, hey, she's reaching out to me. Must be because she wants to see me again. So you make the next date and act accordingly, and then get off the phone. It's really simple. Don't complicate things, and don't over pursue, or else you will wreck things. But it sounds like you got a good chance to keep this thing going, but you did exactly the right thing that you should do, which was you waited for her to get back to you instead of texting her again and again and calling her again and again when she didn't call you back. So if you have a question or you got a situation that you'd like to get my help with, go to my website, click the products tab at the top of your screen, and follow the instructions for booking a paid phone coaching session. And I will talk to you soon.